you'll never get.
The final two, you'll be on your own.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome committee members. We're about to begin the Standing Committee on Crown and Central Agencies. I'd like to welcome and introduce members. My name is Ken Cheveldayoff and I'll serve as chair this afternoon. Stephen Bonk, Fred Bradshaw, MLA, Noor Berkey, Terry Jensen, Dana Scorpad, and Doyle Vermette. This afternoon we'll have Trent Weatherspoon substituting in for Doyle Vermette. Pursuant to Rule 148, subsection 1, the following estimates and supplementary estimates were committed to the Standing Committee on Crown and Central Agencies on March 28, 2024 and March 20th, 2024, respectively. 2024-25 estimates, Vote 18, Finance, Vote 12, Finance Debt Servicing, Vote 33, Public Service Commission, Vote 13, Sask Builds and Procurement, Vote 86, Sask Builds Corporation, Vote 155, Lotteries and Gaming, Saskatchewan Corporation, Vote 151, Municipal Financing Corporation of Saskatchewan, Vote 152, Saskatchewan Power Corporation, Vote 153, Saskatchewan Telecommunications Holding Company, Vote 140, Saskatchewan Water Corporation, Vote 150, Sask Energy Incorporated, Vote 175, Debt Redemption, Vote 176, Sinking Fund Payments, Government Share, Vote 177, Interest and Gross Debt, Crown Enterprise Share. Also, we'll be looking at the 2023-24 supplementary estimates, number 2, Vote 18, Finance, Vote 13, Sask Builds and Procurement, and Vote 175, Debt Redemption. Today, the committee will be considering the 2024-25 estimates for SaskTel and Sask Power. We will begin with the estimates for Vote 153, the Saskatchewan Telecommunications Holding Company Loans Subvote ST01. Minister Duncan is here with his officials. I will remind and ask officials to identify themselves before they speak and not to touch the microphones. The answered operator will turn the microphones on for you. Yes, that includes you, Mr. Minister, as well. I see the smile on your face. Minister Duncan, may you please open with your opening comments and introduce your officials.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. We're pleased to be here this afternoon to discuss the latest estimates for SaskTel. First, I want to begin by introducing the officials that have joined me today. To my left, Charlene Gavel, the President and CEO of SaskTel. To my right, Doug Kozlowski, Vice President, Corporate Counsel and Regulatory Affairs. Seated behind us is Scott Smith, Chief Financial Officer, as well as Jeff Welke, Director of Corporate and Government Relations. As well, my Chief of Staff, David Keoghan, is here to assist as well. Since we're only in the first few days of SaskTel's new 24-25 fiscal year, today I'll focus on providing a general overview of SaskTel's performance over the past 12 months, as well as their ongoing activities and investment priorities. This year's final financial statements will be released later this spring. After I present this overview, we'll be pleased to discuss any specific points or issues brought forward. Much like other years in its recent history, SaskTel began the 23-24 fiscal year in a healthy position, with a strong balance sheet and increased revenues to support the critical investments that they are making to advance growth across the province. In the previous 22-23 year, SaskTel reported a total net income of $104.1 million and revenues of $1.3 billion, reflecting growth in wireless network services and equipment, broadband, and data services. Growth in this last formally reported period was partially offset by lower revenues from fixed legacy voice services and Max TV as customers continued to substitute these services with alternatives. That said, SaskTel's ongoing efforts to extend its 5G and broadband networks as well as enhance its reputation as a technology leader set the company up well to pivot into new markets. For the recently concluded 23-24 year, SaskTel is tracking for another positive year with net income near target around $95 million, though final calculations are still ongoing. In this latest financial year, SaskTel also kept true to its capital commitments, with an estimated $400 million spent to strengthen their province-wide networks and operations. SaskTel's capital plan is ensuring the company stays at the forefront of its industry with disciplined and calculated investments. And probably the most visible of these efforts is its Rural Fiber Initiative. The multi-phase initiative to extend SaskTel Infinet services to more of the province is one of the Crown Corporation's largest and most complex expansion programs to date. The initiative in its entirety encompasses over 130 communities and will result in a total investment of $200 million across rural Saskatchewan. With speeds close to a gigabit per second and potential for faster connections in the future, more rural residents and rural businesses will be able to take advantage of the latest digital tools and solutions to connect, learn, and pursue business opportunities through the power of fiber. Already, Phase 1 and 2 communities are now vastly complete, and construction for communities in Phases 3, 4, and 5 are progressing at a solid pace. Along with the Rural Fiber Initiative, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the many strategic partnerships SaskTel has spearheaded in conjunction with the private sector to enable a smart province and a more connected future for Saskatchewan. One example is SaskTel's partnership with majority Indigenous-owned Beaver River Broadband. In 2023, projects at the Minnestickwin Lake Cree Nation, Birch Narrows Dene Nation's Turner Lake community, and Canoe Lake Cree Nation's Eagles Lake community were completed. Heading into the new fiscal year, we expect to see more progress and good news for underserved and Indigenous communities across the province. SaskTel's deployment of its smart community solutions in Melfort is also deserving of recognition and comes as a result of many discussions, collaborative efforts, and shared learning between SaskTel and analytics provider Cavalli. Our government is pleased to see how the solution is empowering the City of Melfort with valuable data and information that it is using in turn to reduce service delivery costs and better serve its citizens. Before closing, I'd like to spend a few moments to also remark on the monumental efforts taking place to bring the next generation of wireless technology across SaskTel's networks of over 1,000 individual sites. While SaskTel's 5G rollout will be a process for years to come, it cannot be overstated the tremendous amount of planning, coordination, and hard work going on behind the scenes to make sure that each upgrade goes smoothly and with minimal disruption to community coverage. In all, the transition to 5G will see SaskTel invest over $650 million in capital and operating expenses, which will drive economic activity in all corners of Saskatchewan. Just last month, SaskTel announced that it turned up 5G on 30 additional towers, serving rural communities and highway corridors across the province. Taken all together, SaskTel has now completed 5G upgrades on over 470 cell sites across the province since initially launching its 5G network in Regina in late 2021. All the achievements that I've briefly highlighted have been made possible thanks to responsible investments, borrowing, an engaged and skilled workforce, as well as an incredibly skilled senior leadership team led by Ms. Gavel that continues to combine innovation, technology, and customer service expertise to serve the people of Saskatchewan. For the new 24-25 fiscal year, SaskTel plans to invest approximately $439.8 million of capital, the bulk of it earmarked for the ongoing expansion of fiber and 5G. Through these investments, SaskTel will continue to ensure its customers can connect to the world and fully participate in the modern economy. As well, I'll note for the committee that currently SaskTel continues to work through the collective bargaining process. As always, SaskTel's goal is to reach a fair and reasonable agreement with all of its bargaining units. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll conclude my opening remarks, and we would be happy to entertain the committee's questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Minister, and welcome to officials as well. And Mr. Weatherspoon, you can go ahead with your opening remarks and begin with your questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You're looking sharp here this afternoon, too, I want to say. But,
okay, that gets you 15 minutes more.
Thank you, sir. I just want to thank the leadership that's here with SaskTel. I want to thank the Minister for being here today, and it's my first opportunity to be at the committee table with CEO Gavel. Thank you very much for your leadership, and congratulations in taking on this role. I want to we're talking about an incredibly important asset to the people of Saskatchewan, incredibly important infrastructure, and a very important Crown corporation. So it's a pleasure to enter into some of the questions here this afternoon with respect to SaskTel. I want to thank all those, certainly the senior leadership, but all those thousands of workers across Saskatchewan as well. But I'll cut to the questions here. The first one I'm interested in is what the forecasted net income is for 23-24, and then the dividend, the forecasted dividend to CIC for the same period.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. So the net income, the forecast for the close of 23-24 is estimated to be $95.7 million. We're looking at declaring essentially a 40% dividend, and so the estimate for that is $38.3 million.
So that's for 23-24. Looking to 24-25, can you share those same two numbers, what the budgeted net income is, as well as the budgeted dividend for the year ahead?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We are forecasting that it would be the same in terms of a 40% dividend, and so we're forecasting similar net income of approximately $96 million, and so a forecasted dividend for 24-25 of approximately the same amount, in this case, I think $38.4 million would be the forecasted dividend.
The debt ratio is continuing to climb each year given the large capital programs that are being undertaken. Could you share with us what the long-term debt target is? I guess while you're at it, you could also share what the projected debt ratio is in 24-25, and then importantly the following 2 years in the approved CIC business plan.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I will just preface my comment by saying that the 24-25 forecasted budget is not yet board approved, and so it's subject to change. But at this point, this is what we are forecasting. In terms of 24-25, what is being budgeted in terms of the debt ratio is 56.7%. Targeting out to 28-29, I can give you numbers all the way out to 28-29. The forecast for 25-26 is 56.2. 26-27, it drops to 55.4. 27-28, the forecast is that it drops to 54.2. And 28-29, the forecast is that it drops to 53%.
Thanks for that information. Could you speak to what the long-term debt target is that you have right now?
Term target for debt to equity is 55%.
What was the debt to equity a decade ago, if you will?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I have in front of me, going back as far as only 2020, 2021, where it was 50.4%. If you want to go back further than that, it would take some work for us to provide that information. I would just as well note that that certainly is in line with industry debt ratios. Over the last, in the same sort of time frame over the last 4 years, as an example, Bell's industry, their debt ratio has gone from 56.9% to 63%. TELUS is around 60% over that time frame. Rogers has gone from 65% all the way up to 80%. In 2023. And so, I think that this does show that SaskTel does remain in line with industry debt ratios for this particular sector.
Thanks for the information. Could you speak to what the size of the capital program is for 2024-25, and then also in those forecasted out years that were identified with respect to the debt to equity ratios?
Thanks for the question. Mr. Witherspoon, just in terms of capital spending, so just to give you a little bit of background, 23-24, it was a forecast, it was budgeted of approximately $412 million. And, I would say that 24-25 will be a similar number.
So last year it was forecasted for 412. What was the actual for 23-24? And then thanks for confirming that this year's budget then would be 412. And then if you can just provide the number for the out years up to 27-28 again.
So right now, I'll just say that 23-24, because the audit is not yet complete, the books aren't closed on 23-24. We don't have an actual for you, but I can say that the forecast at this point is approximately $381 million. But again, we'll confirm that once the fiscal year wraps up.
And then do you have the subsequent years, the ones that are forecast, or I guess they'd be part of your CIC approved business plan?
Thanks for the question. Going out to 28-29, what we're forecasting would be a range of between approximately $360 million all the way up to about $420 million over those years. That's a part of the 5-year capital plan, but obviously each of those years will be based on the plans as presented to the board and presented to CIC and government for approval. But it would be I'll just say it'll be a range of between $360 million and roughly $420 million.
And how many years do you have approved in your CIC business plan right now? Is it 2 years ahead that you'd have approved there? And can you share those numbers?
So the capital plan for SaskTel gets approved on a yearly basis. It's based on a 5-year forecast, so then every year that gets updated based on what the spending was of that, what was able to be achieved in terms of the spending of that year, plus then any additional plans that get approved in subsequent years. So it's approved on an annual basis by the board, by CIC, but it's based on a 5-year forecast.
And the range in that forecast is 360 to 420.
Correct.
Okay. And what, moving forward, 360 is a smaller capital plan. What would, I guess, what could you speak to the adjustment on that front?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I'll just, I guess, over the 5-year plan, just a couple of notes. 5G deployment, for the most part, will be progressing through until 27-28. So I think by that part of the forecasted plan going forward, you'd see those numbers start to fall off. But then obviously there's investments into other areas as well. There would be other business areas of SaskTel where it'd be fairly status quo in terms of investment. I will just say, though, that that range that I gave, the $360 million to $420 million, even on the lower end, $360 million would be a significant year for capital. When you look at the past, I'll just go back to the past probably 10 years, $360 million in capital by SaskTel would have been achieved. Really quick numbers here that I'm looking at. Likely, certainly once in the last year, in the last 10 years for sure. We would have had high 200 millions, somewhere in the neighborhood of 280 million. Sorry, I'll go back even further one year. So 2013, $355 million in capital. But then subsequent to that, it would have been in the 300 million range, $260 million range. So even, the point on that is that 360 to 420 million in capital over the next 5 years, 360 million in the course of the last number of years is still a pretty significant capital investment.
Thanks so much. Do you have a number for what you would book inflation at on those components of a capital plan? I guess it depends on whether it's 5G or other infrastructure. But could you speak to what inflation has looked like in this space?
Trend.
Repeat the question. The question was, so we're talking about the different amounts for the capital program over the last number of years. My question was, what's inflation look like in this this sector and the various components of the capital program?
I'll take the question. So when we look at our capital budget overall, I wouldn't say we apply a specific inflation factor because all of the pieces of our capital budget are very different. So yes, we do look at inflation and apply that to the various projects as appropriate, right, or the various programs as appropriate. And we use the best information we have from the year before to estimate the work that we're going to do and the cost of those various components, whether it's for our 5G program and tower builds or fiber. So I wouldn't say it's there's a specific inflation factor that went into the capital budget as a whole. It's based, again, on estimating it as best we can.
No, thanks for that information. I guess I'd ask to the Minister, what's the projected amount of borrowing for SaskTel in 25, 26, and then 26, 27? That would be part of the approved CIC business plan as well. I think you have. And also just to clarify what the borrowing program is for the current fiscal 24, 25.
you guys ever see Bradshaw catch a fish?
Just heard it's legend, I think. Story gets bigger all the time.
I've never had a chat with people through his riding all the time. No one's ever seen him actually catch one.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. In 24-25, SaskTel is planning to issue $150 million in debt. However, there's also a $50 million repayment of debt that is due in 24-25. Similar story in 25-26. They're forecasting to issue $100 million, but there's a $50 million repayment of debt. In the following year, 26-27, they're forecasting to issue an additional $100 million in debt.
Thank you. What's the value of SaskTel's assets at the end of 23-24, and what's the projected value of SaskTel's assets at the end of 24-25, and then the 2 following years after that?
Seen those before. It's a big one, Pella. I only want to do it.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. Based on the plan going forward, 24-25, total assets $3.585 billion, 25-26, $3.698 billion, 26-27, $3.816 billion, 27-28, $3.957 billion, and 28-29 forecasted total assets of $4.053 billion.
Thanks for that. Thanks for those answers, that information. My question is, why did SaskTel repay an equity advance to the government a few years ago while they were still borrowing a lot of money and certainly debt levels were increasing?
get through next by lunch. Gonna get you to bring me some trees. What do you need? From, that Howard nursery there. Oh. I don't know if the timing would work. The end of session here. Get quite a few from, there's some different fruit bearing stuff and, usually some spruce and stuff too. They're good little operation there. Yeah, oh, yeah, it is. I used to get them, they used to bring them in, I buy it for here, they used to bring them down in the STC, you know what happened to that.
How many people bring these?
Not very many this year, just a few. I'll check and see if the timing will window.
I'm gonna get some there next year. When I'm retired,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take out a bunch of my old willows, so
Yeah.
and I'm gonna replace them with 3 rows of staggers of those
Yeah.
fast growing poplar.
Yeah,
I think I'll look too old to put in spruce.
yeah. That's great, poplars.
Yeah.
No.
And I'm gonna
I had
stagger.
trouble getting my poplars going to deer really damaged.
I want to stagger it where I can get my rototiller in between, two
Yeah.
of the rubber tires.
Yeah. Makes a difference.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I guess I would just say, in terms of the question that you asked, there was a request by the shareholder that SaskTel made an equity repayment. This was, I would say at a time where borrowing requirements for SaskTel at the time were not significant. It was also at a time where SaskTel could do so based on the financials of the company and still maintain a strong debt-to-equity ratio. And so that was a request that was made back in, I believe, 2018, 2019.
Okay. Just when you look at the debt that's been added, right, and the debt-to-equity ratio that's been dialed up in just those last number of years that were referenced there. I think 2020 was 50%, and this year 57%. That's a big increase, and certainly hundreds of millions of dollars of debt that's been added. I just wanted to revisit that piece because it was, I think, a frustration that that government intervened and enforced that equity advance at that point in time, and certainly it's hasn't helped the financial position of the this important Crown corporation or the ability for it to deliver the important services that that people count on. Moving along just a bit here, I guess, sort of in a similar vein, though, we can look at connectivity, and SaskTel plays such an incredible role in connecting this this vast province, rural, remote, northern regions of the province. Now, there's still a good distance to go for many parts of Saskatchewan, though, on this front, and SaskTel is such an essential, critical actor on this front, and something that can really be leveraged to make this happen. If you think of connectivity and the reality now, when you're talking internet and cellular coverage, it's no longer some sort of luxury. It really is an essential service. It's a necessity. It's critical for folks by way of security and safety and quality of life, and then certainly very important as far as the economic opportunity that it extends, or the barriers that it presents for some rural parts of the province, northern parts of the province, First Nations across the province. So my question is how you deem it appropriate to continue to take the dividend and the cash from SaskTel at a time where you have this public policy that's very important to the whole province, connecting these rural and remote and northern regions. So it's a very important public policy objective here that we fully support and that we need to make a greater priority. But how does the government justify taking the dividend that it continues to in the cash from SaskTel when those dollars, could be leveraged to address public policy that we just spoke about?
Yeah.
finally gave up.
I put some out at, the little bit of land that we have, and I built a big, deer fence around it, and have a bit of an orchard, and that's,
I'd have to have a fence around it, because I tried everything
Yeah.
I could keep them out
Yeah.
there.
Ours are coming along pretty nice, the ones we have in there. It's cherries, haskaps, apples, grapes.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I guess a couple of comments with respect to your question. First of all, I would just say that SaskTel is moving remarkably fast in deploying 5G as well as fiber, particularly through Infinet and the Rural Fiber Initiative. There's only so much capacity that any company, including SaskTel, can move through this type of deployment of technology at a time where the world is doing this. So, I would just commend the work that SaskTel has done in partnering with communities and building those partnerships to deploy capital and deploy technology around the province. We recognize this as a government. And I think that, the fact that government has recognized this is capital intensive. We're talking about capital budgets that will be in excess of $400 million, certainly for likely this upcoming year. We will be close to that for the fiscal year that is closing. And going forward over the next 4 or 5 years, we'll be significantly around that $400 million in capital spending. And so we've recognized that as a government by reducing the dividend from 90% down to 40% over the last couple of years, knowing that this is going to be a significant spend in terms of capital, while continuing to ensure that the debt-to-equity ratio is healthy. It is within industry norms. Frankly, it's below our SaskTel's peer competitors in this sector. And I would just also note the fact, as an example, in 2004, as an example, the capital spend of SaskTel was $126 million, and a 93% dividend was taken, which amounted to $88 million. So we're spending well over $400 million forecasted for this upcoming year. We have reduced the dividend to 40%. And keep in mind that is going to be less than a $40 million dividend on a $400 million capital spend for the upcoming year. So even if we didn't declare a dividend at all, it would be a tenth of what we're going to spend on capital going forward. So we're trying to balance off ensuring that we have the funds, that the company is healthy to be able to make record-breaking investments into the telecommunication system in the province, while ensuring that SaskTel, as a Crown corporation, does contribute through a dividend, a lower dividend for the upcoming year. That's certainly the purpose of a Crown corporation, is to be able to provide those services, particularly in rural communities. And I'd be happy to go through the list of communities that are going to benefit from SaskTel's investment, particularly through the fiber program, while ensuring that they are also contributing so that we can have the services that the people of this province want. That's been the focus of this budget. Classrooms, care, and community, and SaskTel is going to contribute when it comes to building stronger communities.
I guess just to the minister, this has been a repeated call that I've made at any chance with ministers previous, and as you look at the importance of making connectivity happen across Saskatchewan and just how essential it is to connect rural and northern Saskatchewan. It truly is an incredibly important public policy objective that has to be met and needs to be made a greater priority. It's been impeded by the dividend that's been taken for many years, although still reduced. You're still talking about, tens of millions, and add that on top of the hundreds of millions that have been taken. It has an impact. Certainly SaskTel is so well positioned to be leveraged on this front, and it needs to be enabled. What it doesn't need is barriers on this front. I guess the question is one of appropriateness. Of course, you basically, through this dividend at this time, as you're pushing forward this important public policy objective, you're slowing the objective of connecting Saskatchewan, but you're transferring debt from the government's GRF operations to SaskTel, and debt that's associated with this public policy objective rather than a true commercial operation. So it's a question of whether that's appropriate. I guess my question is, doesn't that above practice that the government taking the dividend that it is here simply result in the product pricing at SaskTel having to continue to increase to support subsidizing this very important expansion, which ultimately, without having those dollars, reduces the competitiveness of the company?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I guess I would say that the capital structure of SaskTel is one that compares very favorably to its competitors in the industry. It's one that makes sense. SaskTel still has to operate efficiently and effectively, and I think is doing so. I think one of the factors that you have to and I know you're aware of this, is that SaskTel operates in a competitive environment. So, the capital structure and the business plan going forward, and that's been in place the last couple of years, I would say that, first and foremost, what SaskTel is mindful of and has to be mindful of is not only are they a Crown corporation, but they are in a competitive environment. So their prices are essentially done in a way that is set in a way that is competitive so that they're not losing businesses. That being said, SaskTel is investing in communities that other competitors are not going into, and they're doing so in a profitable way. So I think that, they're able to balance their role as a Crown corporation, that is providing services to communities that others will not go into, doing so in a competitive way, doing so in a way that they are able to stay competitive with their other sector players in this area, having to keep their rates comparable and affordable, and competitive, because they know that they will lose business if they don't. And so they are always mindful of that. And also, as a Crown Corporation, though, also contributing to the betterment of this province, in this case through a dividend that helps to support the shareholder, the government, in providing for the classrooms, the care in the community that I think we all want to see. So, I certainly, as the minister responsible, am. I think that they are operating in an appropriate manner as a Crown Corporation. Knowing that there's a lot of competing priorities out there, but certainly contributing to the province, and as well as doing what they have to do to remain competitive, to keep market share, and to work with government in moving forward on priorities of the province, in moving things like rural fiber forward. Doing so in a way that is, as I said, going into communities that there aren't others going into, and doing so in a profitable way. So I think they're doing a great job of balancing off all those things.
The connecting Saskatchewan is critical. Like, this is something that needs to be a priority. It's why we've been pressing the last number of years for greater support for SaskTel to be leveraged on this front. And speaking about the competitiveness and for SaskTel, it's very much one of the challenges with the government taking the dividend at a time where a very important public policy program objective of connecting Saskatchewan needs to occur. The minister spoke about profitability, and certainly SaskTel is profitable itself. Can he speak, though, about the expansion of wireless, for example, to areas that, rural and remote and northern areas? That's a public policy objective that's important to this province, but it's not one, can the minister just clarify, it's not one that's bringing greater profitability, is it, to that Crown Corporation?
To the question, Mr. Witherspoon, I guess I would just say that SaskTel is continuing to invest in ensuring that we do have, for example, on the cell service side, 5G coverage around the province. First and foremost, SaskTel has to do so to ensure that they remain competitive with their competition. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. SaskTel is investing $525 million to deploy 5G in communities across the province. It's been installed on more than 450 towers with a wider rollout that is going to continue well into 2026. As well, I would just say that on the rural fiber program, what we have put in place, we're into phase 6 now, I believe, in terms of fiber to communities. Where phase 6 it includes communities as low as population of 200 and less. There will be phases after 6 over the course of the next couple of years, and so I want to ensure that I'm not leaving the impression that SaskTel is only looking at areas in terms of profitability. SaskTel has, I think, done a really great job of trying to balance off ensuring that they do stay profitable, but also investing into communities and around the province where certainly other competitors aren't going, for a variety of reasons, including potential profitability. That's obviously one of them, but also because they have a public policy mandate to invest in communities and invest in the people of this province, to expand the cell network as well as internet fiber into communities that people have an expectation in this province that they can have service, in this case by a Crown corporation. And so that's not without significant work and significant amount of capital that is being spent. And at the same time balancing off that a reduced dividend is still going to be requested. But again, certainly a reduction from the levels of dividends that would have been required prior to moving into a capital program over the next couple of years. That is, as I've said before, going to be well in excess of at least $400 million over the coming years.
Just to reiterate, I mean, SaskTel is so well positioned to respond to this challenge, and it's a critical challenge of our time. And the criticism is clearly just of that of the government taking the dividend at a time where we have such a public policy objective that needs to be advanced, and by doing so, it forces other business and residential customers to pay for this public policy objective through their own rates and through increases, while reducing the competitiveness of this very important Crown corporation, as well as its fiscal position, of course. But I want to move along a bit just to make sure I'm hitting other areas here as well. Can you list to me the product price challenge or changes that have been instituted to products in 2022, 23, as well as 23, 24?
Mr. Witherspoon, for the question, and I'm sorry, I don't really have an answer for you at this point in terms of what rates have, I think the question was what rates of, what the rate plans have looked like over the last number of years. The challenge that SaskTel has compared to other Crown corporations is those rates can change essentially at any given moment based on what the competition is doing. And so when there is a price war that the big three initiate, SaskTel has to respond to that. So rates will have fluctuated on different, and obviously there's Cell, there's Max TV, there's other services that they provide. So I don't have a comprehensive list of what rates have looked like over the last 3 years because, you know, it can change quite frequently, as opposed to, say, some of the other utility crowns where it's a, you know, whether it's through a rate review process. Now, we can get into, if you want to talk about some of the regulated, mandated types of services and rates on this, you know, specific services, but in terms of the competitive, like what are cell phone rates today? Or what are they compared to what they were 2 years ago? That's a harder question to answer just because of the change in the marketplace changes quite quickly in a competitive environment.
Mindful of time as well, and not wanting to ask something that's too resource intense, but would it be reasonable for the officials to provide back to the committee the product price changes over the snapshot over those last 2 years and supply that back through the, I guess, to me as a member, but ultimately to the committee?
If what might be easier, if, you know, maybe just for you to consider, the challenge with this is like literally this could be hundreds of changes because it's cell phone, it's Max, it's Infinite, it's you bundle those together, it could be different depending on the product. If it's a cell phone, that product may have a different package. So, you know, there might be a way that we could work with you to kind of like you know, we'll think about some ideas in terms of what, like a competitor, a snapshot of different products, but to get you every rate change over the last 3 years, it's literally hundreds of changes.
Maybe then over those last couple of years, even if it was, if there was periodic, if you take a snapshot on those products, maybe every 3 months or something like that. So then you're only reporting it out 4 times for a year, for example. Would that be sort of 4 snapshots into the changes?
Well, yeah, we will. I don't want to. I don't want to make that commitment other than, you know, we'll take the suggestion under advisement.
Yeah, and happy to hear from folks if there's a simple way that kind of gets the snapshot that's needed. If we're looking at the actual expenditure for 23-24, as well as for 24-25 for the various programs, I'm wondering if you're in a position to provide the information here today, or I'd be happy to receive it later if you're not. But the question would be the expenditure to fiber to the home, fiber transport network, the cellular network, new cell towers to expand coverage, Max TV, and Fusion. So those components, I'm wondering if you could break down the actual expenditure for 23-24, the budgeted amount for 24-25 for each of those.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I'll try to keep it at a pretty high level, just considering that the time that we're at. So I would say a large piece of the capital spend for the upcoming year is going to be in the 5G deployment. It'll be, well in excess of $100 million in 5G deployment. We'll upgrade and enhance capacity at approximately 197 cell sites, including deployment of 3,500 spectrum on approximately 55 cell sites. There's about $5 million that'll be spent on constructing new cell sites, as well as about $13 million in some of the wireless core, Samsung network software, and some other construction expenses. Approximately $130 million will be spent on fiber. That'll be the fiber program. Well over $100 million will include the rural fiber initiative and communities outside the 9 major centers. About $13 million in the 9 major centers, as well as, that's roughly $130 million. About just over $70 million will be spent on technology, so that'll be improving just generally demand and growth, as well as network modernization. There'll be some dollars for Max TV and Max TV stream growth and service development. And then not quite $100 million we're forecasting to spend on the customer service and operational side to support our customers.
Thanks for the information. I'll try to keep things moving along. I think the chair might add a couple hours here for us here tonight. He's looking sharp here today, so we'll see if he'll add a couple hours to these estimates. But to the Regina office tower, I was wondering how old the current SaskTel office building is in downtown Regina, what the condition of that building is given its age, and what kind of rejuvenation work will be required in the next few years. Specific to this fiscal, what's budgeted for rejuvenation work on the building in each of the next 4 years, starting with the current?
Is it older than Don Morgan? I don't think it is. Yeah, I don't think Morgan feels it. Just does let them, clearly crazy on coffee and water. What's that? Morgan was the lawyer from Marconi. Yeah, that's right. Don just gets teased or worse. Yeah. Yeah. His prime. I can't believe Morgan's gonna come help us. It's great. I can't believe it either. What's up this event? Oh, I'm sure. I just wanted. Yeah, that's cool. Do you know is it just one person running so far? Yeah, it's on. No, there's like 7 highly motivated. 7 highly motivated, and they've been outdoor knocking and gathering. I've been trying to find info, but it's hard to find. Yeah, one person. It's Maureen. It's not Maureen. Okay. She's really lovely. I've got to meet her a couple times. Yeah. I always see her and Jamie Martin. So whenever I'm in the event, it's been exclusive. My sister decided against the term. Oh, just, I was asking some. That's a good story.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. So the building opened in 1981, almost old as you and I, not quite. But as you and I will know, anything of that vintage does need some care and attention. And so planning is underway. There's no there's no plans that have been assigned or signed off or approved, but the planning is underway. Over the 5-year plan, there's, I would say notional allocations of dollars, but at this point, they're really placeholders because the planning continues.
Thanks, Minister. With respect to the relationship of SaskTel with Bell and TELUS, I understand that SaskTel has a partnership of sorts with Bell and TELUS in terms of their wireless networks. Can you explain the nature of the partnership, the specific obligations of each partner, and the financial framework under which each partner is allowed to operate on the other partners' wireless towers? And then maybe just subsequent to that, how much money do you expect to pay Bell and TELUS to operate on their towers for the fiscal year 24-25? And how much money do we expect Bell and TELUS to pay us to operate on our towers for 24-25? And then just a question of when the present agreement with Bell and TELUS is over.
I said, like I said, listen, the guy you got there, he's a good guy, actually. Like, I get him. Like, did she tell you that? I said, like, count him as a buddy, but, at the end, these things. And so I said, we need, good, strong candidate. Have any of you ever considered it? If not you, then who? The one woman, she's a smart, good-looking woman, she says, well, she said, I wouldn't do that to my brother. I wouldn't be against that. She was great.
She'd be like, this guy.
Glad I said all those nice things about you before.
Next time. Go watch out. Maybe it'll be.
You must have been happy to hear all those nice things I say.
What's that?
You must have been happy to hear those nice things I say.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We never heard of it.
It's true.
Well, that's awesome. If not you, then who?
I wouldn't want to run against my brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. Politics in the family.
Teachers will pay for it.
Yeah, come on. It's maybe a social worker.
Okay.
Doug Kozlowski. So the question was related to an agreement between SaskTel and Bell and TELUS. What I can say is we do have an agreement. It's highly confidential. But what I can say about it is that the agreement allows our customers to roam outside the province and gives our customers a great experience. And similarly, it allows Bell and TELUS customers to roam within Saskatchewan without having to build a network. So it's a reciprocal agreement. I can't say much more. It's very confidential, and I'm not even sure if I've said too much already. But it's one of those agreements where there is a reciprocal network sharing agreement, and it's just for the experience of our reciprocal customers.
See, the minister lawyered up on the response here, but I respect that. Given that there's two partners, it's Bell and TELUS, and the number would include both of them, the number wouldn't identify either one of them then. You're not able to share the cumulative number? That would be too much info?
Yeah, under the terms of the agreement, it would.
Thank you. And sorry, did you answer when the agreement's, when it ends? Okay.
It's an ongoing agreement.
Okay. The number of landlines, of course, I mean, technology is changing. They continue to drop rather quickly. I think it's 6% decline last year. I guess, what are you doing with your landline system to reduce costs? Or maybe you can just speak a little bit to that program. And, is there a bottom the decline in landlines? Like, what are you seeing as far as the trend there, and what would that number look like? And if you have any other plans with that network as you're experiencing this decline?
Still have a landline? I do, yeah.
I've so, you know, put my new one, and I had to pay you money for this. I was like, I think we're gonna just keep the old stuff.
Well, that's one of the main reasons now still, I feel a little bit of, I don't know, old school loyalty or something to it, I don't know, but it's kind of when William comes home when he's on his own, I like having him, because he doesn't have a cell phone. Absolutely. Totally.
My parents still have them, but they have no cell coverage. We're really poor.
Yeah.
My mom has a cell phone. It doesn't have a turn up. Yeah, so my dad just got on the, we have to tell them how to run it.
No, that's okay. Thanks for the question. So we have about 245,000 customers still on landlines. So we continue to support those customers. You're right, it is dropping at about a 6 to 8%. I think last year it was 6%, you're correct. In any given year, in the most recent number of years, it's been in that 6 to 8% decline. So SaskTel continues to support those customers and making any system improvements where they can. Ultimately, those customers will be served eventually by fiber. Versus the existing copper system, but the complete change over to fiber, we're talking decades away. So in the meantime, though, SaskTel continues to support those customers.
Thanks for that. Question here. I've got lots of questions, and we don't have that much time, but getting one in from my colleague from Cumberland. With respect to Highway 106 at the Hanson Lake Road, specifically cell coverage. I know he's advocated lots over the years and identified what a risk it is to not have cell coverage on that vital artery up through the north and to the northeast side of the province. I think there's been some pretty bad tragedies in the last number of years. So I guess just the question is, what's the plan on cell service for Highway 106, the Hanson Lake Road?
Up by Fred's cabin. You're further east, yeah. Fred's gonna fly us into his cabin.
Won't say we want a parachute. Be good fish for.
Government's asking for a friend. Yeah. You told me you'd take me years ago. What's changed?
Lost your number. Again. He was watching his hair outside the country that day.
Thanks for the question. It is an area that is one that we have had a number of discussions with the federal government. SaskTel has had a series of discussions with them. I think the former minister, I know the former minister had indicated in the past that it's a corridor that we have applied for federal funding. We're hopeful that the federal government will accept that application. But at this point, they're still going through their processes and adjudicating their applications. But it is an area that we're hoping to be able to do some work with the federal government on.
Okay, thanks for that. You take us to another area that we've canvassed over the years, myself with the previous minister and with officials, and that's the inadequate and unfair level of funding from the federal government with respect to broadband funding and the couple funds that we should be eligible for. It's way past time that Saskatchewan receive its fair share of that funding. This was addressed as well in the SUMA and SARM study on connectivity, which was a really good report and just highlighted that we have the lowest level of investment by the federal government from those connectivity funds. And this isn't fair. It's not right. I've taken this up with the previous minister over the years. I guess my question to you as minister, or if it was the previous minister, as minister, have you had any meetings with the respective federal minister on this front, or had the previous minister had any meetings with the respective federal minister?
I got styling. Put that guy to work. What's that? Yes. Like I text, normally we'd be at the rink and I'll see his kids at the rink and I feel bad. I'll text him little pictures of them ripping around. He's in Ottawa. His youngest boy, he's already their size. Yeah. Yeah.
He texted me last week, he thought he would go on a walk 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. His oldest boy's a real nice hockey player too. That's probably who you're watching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Black Aces.
Right. How old is he now? 7. No, that kid's 11. 7. Turning 11, that kid. He's turning 11? Yeah. He's 1 year older than William, yeah. William's 6 angled out there this year. Big kid. I always text him, I'm like, oh boy, good thing this kid got his hands and skill from his mom. Marissa's brothers were quite good hockey players. Well, I knew it had to come somewhere in the family. I've seen Stanley skate. He's actually not a bad skater.
Okay, here's a question. You guys have suits on top and shorts on the bottom.
That was the old COVID pandemic special. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I think this is an area that I think we'll find agreement. We do think that Saskatchewan should be being provided with additional federal funding when it comes to improving service across the province. I've had an opportunity to discuss this personally with Minister Champagne when he was in Regina earlier this year. He was very receptive to essentially the argument that Saskatchewan was putting forward. I think one of the challenges, I'll just step back and I'll say first, my impression and my understanding of the interactions between the federal agency and SaskTel have been very good. There's been a lot of back and forth dialogue. I know CIC has been involved in some of those discussions as well. I think one of the challenges that we've had to overcome a little bit over the last number of months, probably earlier in the process though, because I think they have a better understanding of this, is just frankly, the unique nature of SaskTel. Oftentimes, and not to say that this requires it, but oftentimes in these types of programs, there's a provincial contribution that's required. And our argument is that SaskTel is the provincial contribution, whereas the federal agency responsible for this program, on one hand, they're looking for, if there is going to be some provincial involvement, on one hand, they might see SaskTel as just another ISP, and so that doesn't count. But on the other hand, when they're looking for what the involvement is of the ISPs, well, SaskTel, in our view, is an ISP, and they say, well, no, that's the government. And so there's a little bit of a contradictory view within the federal government of the role that SaskTel plays. I think that has, for the most part, been clarified now. I think they kind of understand our position and understand the important role that SaskTel plays. So, I'm hopeful that we will soon see the dollars, an agreement with the federal government, and see the dollars flow to Saskatchewan. It's been a frustration of ours, SaskTel's, CIC, the government's, that this is taking longer than it should have. But we're hopeful that the federal government will be able to make an announcement shortly.
Okay, I appreciate the minister's comments on this front and the fact that there's been some engagement with the minister. And I would just continue to urge this as a real priority, because it's really Saskatchewan and SaskTel that have been shortchanged in the process. And so it certainly needs to be a big priority. And, I think it's fair to say, too, that this has been an issue for a number of years now, and it's something that I've addressed regularly with the minister and urged this sort of priority on. It's critical that ultimately we get at least our share of those dollars, and we're a big, rural, vast province, so it's important that we're respected as such. And in dealing with the federal government, I mean, we're better positioned with SaskTel than anywhere else to make those dollars go miles, right, and to connect this province. So just urge this to be a high priority, and I think it's an area that that a government could really lean into at an intergovernmental level and make something happen that's important for the people of the province. I'd like to get a sense of the staff levels and what's going on at SaskTel. Certainly, so many, like thousands of Saskatchewan people derive their livelihoods by working at SaskTel. Very proud in doing so. They, in so doing, they build huge capacity for that Crown Corporation as well, the capacity of that labor force. And if you look at the numbers of staff at that SaskTel, number of SaskTel employees, it's continued to drop year over year, while at the same time the number of contractors that have been hired continues to increase. So I guess my questions, I'll maybe put a couple together and then have your response. Why have you continued to downsize the staff complement at SaskTel when the network has actually grown over that time? And what is your staff target for 24-25? And what's the actual number of staff that you employed in 23-24? And what percentage of SaskTel contractors were from outside the province in 23-24? And what was the value of the contract work that they carried out? And maybe just my final one, just for managing the time within the committee here. Are there any private companies that you presently use to perform installation work in residential homes?
East or two, I gotta take care of this.
Yeah, I can feel that, the pain. It's tough. Went visiting lots of farms.
Yeah.
Seeing them. Seeing them buttons.
Yeah.
PGF everywhere you go, right?
Like, just constant. You can't say no. I had to suffer for it.
You suffer, yeah, confidence in yeah, every place you go. Just take where you go.
Not every place. They serve other things.
Be a good tour.
It was fun.
Good food.
Especially up in the Hungarian area. South of Kipling over there, all the food. Pastries.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. If I do miss any of your questions, because there was a number of those, I trust you'll repeat them for me. I'll just say that the FTE count at SaskTel is approximately 3,250. That's been pretty consistent over the last 2 or 3 years. But it is down, and I don't know the kind of starting year that you want to look at, but that has been a reduction, largely as the workforce has changed, because technology has changed. I remember reading in Hansard from maybe this committee last year, maybe 2 years ago, where the CEO at the time was talking about how at one point there was 800 operators that worked at SaskTel. Today that number is 0. So as technology changes, that will dictate what the workforce numbers will look like. Those reductions, though, have been through attrition. There have been no layoffs, and that's come at a period of time over the last number of years where there's been about 600 retirements at SaskTel as well. And so considerable change going on, not only in the workforce at SaskTel, but also just the industry in which SaskTel is operating in. With respect to, I don't have the figures in terms of contractors or the number of contractors. There will be a variety of reasons why contractors will be used. Sometimes it's specialized knowledge or equipment. For example, boring holes, SaskTel wouldn't have the personnel or the equipment to do that, and so they would contract that work out. There is in terms of in-home, in residential installation, I think was one of your questions at the end. There is my understanding is that there is one installer or contractor that's used. It's really only used during peak season, during high demand for installation for services like Max TV or other those types of services, but it's really limited to peak season during high demand. I'll maybe turn it back to you because I probably missed a few questions in there, but I'll look forward to your next question.
Yeah, thanks, Minister. And maybe this is one again where a little information might be able to be provided back to us. So you identified the one contractor that's used on the residential. Can you just share who that contractor is?
AFL is the company.
And where's AFL located, or what's its ownership?
We're just trying to find that information. My understanding from the officials is that they work in a number of provinces. They do have a presence here in Saskatchewan, but further to that, I'm not aware at this point.
And so then, just following up on the one question, this is something maybe that if we just have an undertaking to provide back sort of to that answer, then where are they located? And then back to the other question I had, what percentage of SaskTel contractors were from outside the province in 23-24, and what was the value of the contract work that they carried out? I understand that that number might not be readily available here, but if that could be supplied back to the committee, to us as members, that would be appreciated. And if I've got a thumbs up on that undertaking, I'll move along to.
Just to add, Mr. Witherspoon, that as of the third quarter of this past fiscal year, over 70% of SaskTel's suppliers were located in Saskatchewan. I know that, just as a comment before we move on to the next question, I'll just say that SaskTel and I know my role as Minister of CIC, there's a dedicated team that work with all the Crown corporations to do what we can to raise that number. We want to ensure that the dollars are staying in Saskatchewan as much as possible. And so we do, this is putting on my CIC hat on for a second, but we do track that number on a quarterly basis and chart the progress. And the other part too is that where there are areas where, for whatever reason, that there's either potentially a Saskatchewan-based supplier that isn't awarded a contract, that group follows up to find out, where they may be deficient in terms of their bid, or in areas where there aren't Saskatchewan bidders on certain jobs within the Crown corporations. There's outreach to the business community to see, why there aren't bidders and what it would take for there to be bidders in different parts of the Crown. So I'll leave that with you, and we'll take your question for further information. I'll take that under advisement as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Just looking at Max, it seems that it's sort of been a bit stagnant as far as the number of folks that have been subscribing. I think it's been hovering around 110, 112,000 customers. I guess my question would be, do you have any plans to try and increase subscription numbers on this front? And if you do, what do those look like? And then one more specific question on this front. Has any member of cabinet or any member of government ever directed SaskTel as to which channels it should host on Max?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Witherspoon. I think SaskTel, like others in the industry, are dealing with the challenge of trying to ensure that they grow their subscriber base when it comes to, in this case, Max. There will be a number of things that will help to do that for SaskTel. The further deployment of fiber, for instance, it will, is one of the ways that we can see an increase market share when it comes to Max TV. Also, the opportunity for SaskTel that comes with the ability to bundle different products. So SaskTel is always looking for ways to keep their subscriber base, to grow that subscriber base, but like other distribution companies, they're being challenged by consumers making other decisions, like going to different types of subscription services. So they're always looking for ways to hold and grow their market share. With respect to the second question that you asked, no. The requirement as a distributor is that there's no political interference in terms of what channels to carry. So that's a regulatory requirement.
I'll just remind members we've got about 5 minutes left in this meeting. Thank you.
Rapid fire. Thanks so much. What was the estimated cost at this point of shifting the equipment for wireless equipment from Huawei to, I believe now it's Samsung, from the perspective of replacing the Huawei equipment with Samsung before the end of life for the Huawei equipment?
Charlene Gable, I'll take that question. Thank you. So the overall cost of the 5G program, it's pretty hard to say what is the swap of the 5G Huawei or the old Huawei equipment versus putting 5G equipment on. So we haven't really quantified in terms of the cost of replacing Huawei. We look at it as an overall 5G program, and we talked about the overall cost of that. And it's a multi-year program in which we'll upgrade the entire province to 5G, and at the same time removing the Huawei equipment as required as required.
Thanks. I've followed up over the years and got different numbers at different times. Do you have a bit of a rough estimate of the cost on this front?
So again, it's really hard to quantify what is specifically related to the replacement because it's just we've put it in the 5G program. So I don't really have an estimated cost of the taking out Huawei.
Just respectful of the time here, I'll maybe move along to a question around fiber optics. We were talking about fiber a moment ago. Which new communities in Saskatchewan will be receiving fiber to their individual homes this year? And in the case of major cities, which new areas in major cities will be receiving fiber optics to their home this year?
Mr. Witherspoon, I won't, for the sake of time, go through all the communities, but I'd be happy to follow up with you afterwards. One of the things to keep in mind, even though at this point there's the 6 phases that have been announced, the completion date for the communities in each of those phases may be different just based on availability of contractors, availability of infrastructure, testing the poles, the hanging fiber, things of that nature. And so I can give you the list of the communities, but it doesn't mean that, you know, those communities will be done at the end of this year, into the next fiscal year. But I won't read, I mean, it's an exhaustive list of communities. I won't go through the whole thing, but just so you know, it's broken up into different phases in which we announced it. But if it makes sense for a crew that's working on this community that's in phase 4, but a community in phase 6 that's been announced is in a neighboring community, it might make sense for them to go to that community rather than to hit all the list in phase 4, if that kind of makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Minister and Mr. Weatherspoon. Having reached the agreed upon time for consideration of SaskTel today, we will adjourn consideration of these estimates. I've taken it right till the end here, but if you do have any very quick comments, Mr. Minister, go ahead.
Yeah, really quickly, just to, I want to thank Mr. Weatherspoon and the committee members and yourself, Mr. Chair, and the support staff that help you out. I also want to thank the officials that are here, but also the men and women of SaskTel that they are representing, who do a great job each and every day in this province, representing this very vital, important company for our province, and do a tremendous job, certainly I can say, in supporting me as their minister. So I just want to, on behalf of my office, thank them for the work that they do.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Weatherspoon?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Chair, but importantly, thanks to the minister, but the officials that are here. CEO Gavel, thanks so much, and the senior officials that have joined us here today, and the thousands that are involved in the work with you every day with this incredible asset and the incredible infrastructure that SaskTel provides, the incredible Crown Corporation and company that it is. So thanks for your time here today. And thanks, Minister, for the undertaking to get a bit of information back on various fronts.
Thank you, members. This committee stands recessed until 6:30 p.m.